So hello and welcome to the 39th episode of the Spotlight Podcast, the unofficial podcast for Century 21 sales representatives in Canada, where we discuss the hot topics and important news in the real estate industry. So I'm your host, Linas Kilius, and with me as always is Eryn Richardson. Eryn, how's it going?
Going great. How are you, Linas?
I'm doing pretty good, can't complain. So Eryn is a broker and general manager with Century 21 Heritage Group. Eryn has an extensive background in online marketing, technology, and customer service. I'm the head of business development at the real estate marketing company Homeania. So real estate agents and their clients rely on professional home inspections to make crucial home purchasing decisions. It's one of the most common conditions in the offer for purchase and sale, and for a good reason. You want an expert to look over this large financial commitment your client is about to make and make sure that they have all the information available to them before the offer goes firm. But did you know that until recently, only BC and Alberta were the only two provinces to regulate home inspectors and issue licenses? The Toronto Star, I think, phrased it the best. Anyone with a flashlight and a business card can promote themselves as a home inspector and peddle their services as such across most of Canada. Well, it turns out just recently, Ontario passed legislation to start regulating this industry. We're going to talk about home inspection today and what to be careful of when selecting home inspectors in all provinces, licensed or not, and the discussion that goes along with that. But first, we wanted to quickly talk about the real estate market in the GTA because it's had a bit of a shift in the past couple of weeks. Eryn, are we suddenly in a buyer's market?
No, I don't think we're in a buyer's market necessarily. I mean, it's an interesting market because of the flooding of inventory that's hit the market. It was a record in terms of the amount of listings in a short period of time. In our area, went from 37 to 370 listings within a month and a half. So now, you know, what happens when that happens is one, media gets a hold of it and lets everybody know that the bubble's bursting and all this sort of doom and gloom stuff. And so that's sort of the front and first. But the real estate agents, depending on the market you're in, are saying different things. Some markets are oversaturated. Nobody's getting showings on their listings. Other areas are still getting multiple offers. So we're sort of in a transitional stage right now, Linus.
So why has this all of a sudden happened? Like, why has there been this shift of flood of inventory in the GTA recently?
Well, all you need to look at is the history of real estate in the last 30, 40 years. Every year, this sort of thing happens. It happens at different levels and different at different rates. But what's happened in our industry was what last year, let's say you're sitting around January and we had very little inventory on the market, and we talked about that, Linus, and one of the predictions we made was wait for it because we'll have a lot of things come on the market. But as in any market, any spring market in the past, buyers are typically early. So buyers will come into the market, start looking at homes early and want to purchase first, and sellers are typically late. So they're late because they're reactionary or they couldn't get their home up quick enough. They had to put some stuff off. They weren't ready. They want to wait for the flowers and the gardens and all the rest of it. So that's what happened. We had more buyers in the market that we do probably today back in February, and they wanted to buy, and we only had 37 listings in some areas. Now we have 370 listings and half as many buyers, and some buyers are still there, but they just want to wait to see what happens. So nobody's purchasing. So that's what's happened.
Okay, is there a good way if you do have a listing come up, or if you're planning on having a listing come up soon, that you can prepare your seller for this kind of situation too? Because I mean, they may not know that the market's shifted slightly. They might be expecting, a crazy amount of offers to be coming in on their home in a very short period of time. Is that something that we should be tempering expectations on?
We do. We need to definitely temper the expectations of sellers that it is a different market. It's now oversaturated with homes, which means and people generally understand supply and demand. And when there's so much supply, you have to be the best value in the market to sell. It's not like things aren't selling. It's just which ones are selling. Well, it's the one that shows the best. It's the one that is the best value. So what you're asking in terms of price, opposed to and what you're purchasing. So things are moving, but the way it was before is anything and everything sold. Now it's, the best of the best are selling. So you have to be competitive. And if they're not willing to do things like staging and painting and getting the house ready and all the things that we needed to do in a regular market, then they're going to be a little disappointed when they put it up to find out that there's very little showings and maybe no offers.
So is this just going back to, the standard strategies you may have employed a couple of years ago before this market got kind of crazy with preparing the home property instead of rushing to market?
Yeah, and I've been saying that, and I hear you say that, and I'm like, well, you know what? The good agents never really changed their strategy. Yeah. The good agents still staged. They still did the virtual tours and did everything else, and they were blowing, the market away with these huge sale prices. And it was because they're still doing a great job for their. So what I'm saying is the good agents, yeah, they're going to continue doing such a great job, and they'll be in this business forever. The agents that kind of got away with it are the ones that would be worried about. So if you've kind of, listen, we'll put it up tomorrow, we'll sell the next day, no big deal. That type of mentality is going to be what separates the agents today from the good ones and the let's say the agents that aren't doing as good a job.
It's almost like the easy way out was an option until maybe a couple of weeks ago, but now it's going to be the case where you have to make sure you focus on, the good fundamentals of being a real estate agent again, I guess.
That's right.
Okay. Well, maybe let's just transition into our main segment here. So interesting to see. We'll have to keep an eye on the market and see how it goes in the GTA and across the country as well. Yeah. But we wanted to talk about home inspection regulation. I think it was episode 2 of this show that we had a home inspector on, and we talked about how home inspection was not regulated in Ontario and many provinces across Canada. However, things have recently changed. What's going on in Ontario here, Eryn?
Well, Ontario's now, and they've been talking about it for a while. I think there was legislation originally brought in. I think they actually got serious about it in 2015. It was the year, but there's been a sort of a lack of professional standards within home inspectors. So anybody, like you said, with a flashlight or without one could do a home inspection. And they sort of relied on the different accreditations and different groups you could join, and I don't even know them that well because I'm not a home inspector, but you'd see all the different home inspectors on Ontario, or I'm a member of this and that, and people try to say this is the better than this one, or but now there's going to be a regulation that you have to actually have a license to trade and to have a business of home inspections in Ontario.
Was this well known amongst real estate agents that this was an unregulated industry? Because like you said, like they might have a business card with like, I'm a member of this organization or this organization. It might seem like it's somewhat regulated, but I guess the reality of it is that you don't necessarily know what the requirements are to join those organizations.
Oh, I listen, and I consider myself a fairly versed agent that sort of knows, the business and all the rest of it. And I couldn't tell you the difference between an IBIDC regulation. Like, who knows what's on their cards, right? Like, and I asked the ones obviously that are in the business what their accreditations are and what courses they've taken. They tell me, and I say, okay, that sounds good, But usually it came from repeat and referrals, and referrals from other agents that use the home inspector usually would be where I would find my home inspectors to start off, and then if they do a good job, continue using them.
So is there any sort of, maybe you don't know the answer to this question necessarily, but is there any legal ramifications to using an unlicensed home inspector, one that doesn't have proper accreditation, if it comes back to haunt you later on, if the purchaser finds something that they think that the home inspector should have found?
Well, I think a lot of the courses, I guess, that were being taught prior and still being taught, whether it be through Carson Dunlop or some of the colleges and stuff like that for home inspectors, they still did a pretty good job of teaching people. So, the home inspectors that I used always had the proper documentation and proper liability waivers and insurance and all the rest of this sort of thing. So I wasn't too worried about the liability end of things, because I think these home inspectors that I used did a pretty good job of explaining to the homeowner that, listen, they can't see through walls. They can't tell what's going to happen tomorrow. They can only tell you what's happened today. But for $400, it was a good snapshot of what the home really structurally, electric, plumbing, that sort of stuff, how it was built. So it was a good snapshot for the homeowner to make an informed decision whether or not they wanted to purchase the property.
Is that mostly what the home inspection is for? Or, I mean, I guess there's other reasons that you might get a home inspection as well, but is it mostly just to get the snapshot of the home?
Well, sure. I mean, there could be different reasons why you'd want to take a look at things. I've had situations where somebody wanted put on a second level in the house. So they had an engineer come in that also had their own inspection. So the different companies, some people were engineers, other people weren't. You pay a little more to get an engineer to come out. So depending on what you're looking to focus on, I think, will be depending on whether or not you go to the next level of home inspector. So you should ask those questions. Is there anything specific you're looking to do with your home?
Well, when you were a regular practicing agent, did you often use the home inspection report for leverage negotiation? I'm assuming most agents probably do that too.
Oh, yeah, but you know what? I never thought it was leverage. I always looked at it as an informative thing. Listen, you're buying a home, whether it be brand new or a resale that's 50 or 100 years old. Each home is going to have its unique issues and things you have to do to maintain the home. I always prepared my clients, my buyers, letting them know what the basics of a home inspection are about, and the fact that it's a good snapshot. It's for you to learn how to maintain a home just as much as it is how well this home was maintained. If there was anything of major consequence, let's say over $500 repair or something like that, yes, you could go back to renegotiate and leverage some of that on terms of pricing. But that would be, on a rare case where, something wasn't disclosed or they didn't know about it. Attics are a great example. You just never know what's up in an attic until you have a home inspection, because you're not popping your head up during a showing. So we'd always find some things in the attic that may be great, maybe it needs to be addressed, and we could go back and negotiate.
Yeah, I always try and avoid sticking my head in my attic. It's a scary place, and I'm glad I'm not a home inspector who's done it on a regular basis. Well, there's an interesting case I came across recently where there's multiple representation situation where the agent recommended a home inspector, and the home inspector, I guess, missed some obvious thing regarding to like flooding in the basement or water in the basement. And it came back to haunt the agent because the agent recommended it and there was no other agent involved. It was just them for the buyer and the seller. Is there any extra steps you should be taking if you're in a multiple representation situation?
Oh yeah. I mean, multiple representation is tough because you are looking out for both a client's best interests, and of course, you don't want to be perceived as giving any information out that would be in the benefit of one over the other. So anytime you do a multiple representation scenario, first of all, I would have somebody represent the other person. I know there's this representation, but I would, on behalf of the buyer, this person's going to be negotiating, giving you advice, to an extent, and then the other side is going to look after the seller, just to have an arm's length. That's sort of the best, I think, case to look after that. The second thing would be, again, because the brokerage is representing both people equally, is not to suggest who to use, is to have a list provided of reputable people, and they choose and they do their own due diligence to ask the questions and determine who they think is the best person to use for the job.
Do we know when these regulations take effect in Ontario, or the regulation of the home inspection industry? Has that been announced?
So I looked into it today, and I don't think it's really been announced when it. The act is in place. The third reading is done. The act is there, but the details concerning, let's say, building the foundations of a good association, a good regulatory body, and things like ethics, having the proper rules and procedures and all that stuff. That's still, I think, being built currently. So the best thing I could or the best way I can describe it is like the real estate industry. We have our Ontario board, we have our local boards, we have the Canadian Real Estate Association, and of course we have RICO, which governs it. So they're looking for, obviously, to develop the board as well as a RICO body that won't be called RICO. It'll be called, maybe ICO or something like that, Insurance or Inspectors Council of Ontario or something like that. But they'll get that all in place, and then as soon as that's all in place, everybody will join the board and get registered. And I was looking in to see if there'd be some grandfathered statuses, obviously with people that have been in the business for a while, or whether or not everybody has to take the courses. Now, that's the questions I have. Are the current the current inspectors out there, are they going to have to take all 10? I've heard of 10 courses and about $400 a course, so $4,000 they're going to have to spend to get their license, right?
Yeah, so in short, there's still a little uncertainty with the actual time that this is going to come into effect, and it does take time to figure all these things out. Now that we know that it's going to be in place doesn't mean that it's going to take effect tomorrow. Like you said, they have to set up all the regulations and the requirements that are required to get a license. So in the meantime, like we might be a year or two out even from this taking place, what should we be looking out for when selecting home inspectors, given that they can have a variety of backgrounds?
The referral, looking to and testimonials. So talking to the people the agents that have used them in the past, you want to use a home inspector that has a good reputation in the industry. Obviously, if they've done a lot of business and they've had a lot of success, giving proper advice and doing things really professionally. I think that's the first thing I would look for. That's the next question I have always is what did you do before you were a home inspector? If they were an accountant and if they had no, let's say, construction background, I would consider whether or not I'd use them because, the guy I always used had a history of construction. He was a foreman, he was a builder, he was all the rest. So he knows houses like the back of his hand. He knows how to build a home, and that's sort of the type of, home inspector I would try and go after personally.
Then finally, I just have one extra question for you. This is more just a curiosity question, I guess, being a homeowner myself. I went through with the building inspector when they went through the property and listened to everything they had to say before purchasing it. Is that something you recommend that either agents or potential purchasers do with the home inspector, or is it just best to leave them to their own devices?
The way I always did it, I want to learn. I want to learn more about the house. I want to be able to answer some of the questions and be knowledgeable. And why not? If we're selling lots of houses and going through a lot of home inspections, why wouldn't you want to learn, right? So I typically would spend some time watching and just shadowing the home inspector, not trying to obviously ask too many questions that it's taken them too long of a time to do the inspection. And I would also caution the homeowners to do the same. Just let them do what they're doing, and then we'll get a walkthrough at the end and ask questions at the end of the inspection. But at the same time, I kind of like to put my nose in and sort of ask a few things, and they like that too. They get some good interaction, and their job can be pretty monotonous and boring at times. So it's nice to have somebody there to chat with during the home inspection.
I won't tell any of them that you said that.
Well, they're just you're doing your job. You're doing your 10th, let's say, home inspection this week. It's nice to deal with agents that they like dealing with.
Oh, for sure.
So I always had a good relationship with my home inspector, and I can call him anytime to ask any question about my own home. So developing those relationships. But I think the key too is most home inspectors do like to be given a little bit of leeway time-wise to get the inspection done without too many questions, so that they can get through the home in under 3 hours. Do
you have anything you want to add to wrap up the discussion?
Well, the way the market's changing, and it has changed in the past, because it was such a seller's market, and we're in non-conditional sale, so multiple offers and everything. Home inspections weren't being done, and that's a big concern for a lot of home buyers and lawyers, because some of these things come up after the fact, and if you didn't have a home inspection, you weren't aware of them. So it can be surprises. So let's look at the markets the way that, we should try and get a home inspection done anytime we can when we're representing buyers. And, they're not there to kill a deal. They're not there to renegotiate a deal. They're there for the best interest of your client. And I believe in them 100%.
That's a pretty good place to end off, I think. So if you like the show, subscribe to our show on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts online. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on the sites, because it really does help. You can watch this and past shows at spotlight.century21.ca/podcast. If you need to reach us, you can email us anytime at podcast@homeania.com. That's podcast at HOM as in Mary, EAN as in Nancy, IA.com. So this podcast is brought to you by the Spotlight Marketing Program, an exclusive marketing package available only to Century 21 agents in Canada. Spotlight provides agents with a comprehensive internet marketing strategy for their listings. We provide high-quality HDR photography, stunning HD video tours, a cutting-edge responsive website, and an extensive advertising system that will help sell your listings faster, sell them for more money, impress your clients, and generate leads. So find out why so many top agents are using Spotlight by visiting spotlight.century21.ca today. Eryn, thanks again as always. Everyone, thanks for watching.
Linas.
Thanks for listening. Have a great week.